Bringing back my childhood, Sly Stone was on the radio when I was growing up. I used to listen to him. He's a disc jockey. So that's beautiful. So, do you know how to love? You know, my friend who grew up in Unity of Pomona, California, and she had a minister named Gertrude Tuntland, and her sister, I don't remember her sister's name, worked with her, and the two of them ran the church. And her sister was the administrator and the Sunday school director, and the Sunday school met in the basement, and she grew up in that Sunday school, and they taught the kids how to love. And the way you love is you just give, and you just yield, and you're surrendered, and you're kind and nice to everybody, and if you love them, they'll love you back, and you just that kind of love. Gertrude, on the other hand, was upstairs, and she was with the adults, and she was a no-nonsense, powerful person. And she was a neighbor when I first started in ministry. She retired about my second year there, but I knew her, and I tell you right now, when she spoke, you did what she said, and she was very powerful, and she told people, no nonsense, stand up for yourself, have good boundaries, don't let anybody push you around, don't be a doormat, and know what you want and go for it. Yin and yang, which is love. How many of us here have found it difficult to know whether Gertrude or her sister is right? Raise your hand. Have you ever found it hard to just, what am I going to do? How am I going to love? I mean, I tried to love in this circumstance, and it seemed to blow up in my face. I tried to love in this circumstance, and I was a little bit too harsh, and I think I hurt someone. It was not a good outcome. And yet, sometimes you've got to be one, and sometimes you've got to be the other. How do you do that? Are you an upstairs love, or are you a downstairs love? Well, I think the truth is that love just is. Love is not a feeling. It is a discipline more than a feeling. Love just is. Love is not a sentiment. It is an experience. And love has its own will. And even Eckhart Tolle says that when you come from the now moment of love, sometimes you find yourself behaving in a very strong and proactive sense that might shock you. And other times, if you come from that essence of love, you surrender in a way that you think is not wise, but why am I surrendering here? You say, how do I find out which to be? Am I supposed to be the upstairs love or the downstairs love? Well, you have to open up your heart and let your heart tell you. There's that in you that already knows how to love. There is that in me that already knows how to love. Together? There is that in me that already knows how to love. But first, you have to let go, have humility enough to let go of what you think love is. Even the spiritual love, even the goody-goody love. Often we talk about the Mother Teresa. She's like the icon of loving service. And service is an important type of love. But Jerry Jampolsky, who wrote Love is Letting Go of Fear, talked about his experience of her. And he went to Calcutta, and he wanted to meet with her, and she didn't have time for him. She spent just a little enough time to tell him that she didn't have time for him. And he said, well, what if I buy a plane ticket? And I'll fly with you wherever you're going next. And I can sit next to you. She says, why don't you take the money that you're going to spend on that ticket and give it to the work? And then spend a month here serving and being with the people. If you want to know what love is, do. And he just wanted to hang out with love. And I don't think he did that, but he said it taught him something about letting go of his assumptions about love. Mother Teresa is a tough person. When I was growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, she got into a fight with the San Francisco Fire Department. And I'm not going to use the word that the fire chief used because I think it offended people. I saw it on their faces. It was a very politically incorrect word that he used for her. But he gave in. She wanted a certain building, and she was moving on to the building, but the fire department wanted it. And in that city, the fire department got what they wanted, except for this time. And he said, I'm not messing with her. She's a pretty tough, and fill in the blanks. It wasn't anything obscene, but it was offensive, so I won't say it. But he knew. Why? Because love can be firm in spiritual service. You know, around the same time, our governor got defeated in an election, Jerry Brown. And he was, his life was devastated. He felt rejected. He went through all kinds of spiritual crisis. He even moved to Japan to become a Zen Buddhist monk. And then after a while, he did that. And then he flew to Calcutta to be with Mother Teresa. And he said that Mother Teresa, he wanted to talk. She said she put him to work in cleaning and washing the indigent, the homeless, the poor. And here he was in a room that he cost him $15 a day. It's just a real bare bones hostel room, and he stayed there for a month. Of course, he'd been trained to become a Jesuit priest, so he'd understood a little bit about spiritual service. But he said he learned more, and he came out of that experience and he thought, "What is my life about? It's about service." You see, love is service. Love is service. Love is a powerful kind of service that doesn't expect anything in return. Love is goodwill. Love is goodwill, and love has boundaries. Love detaches from outcomes. So he decided, what can I do? And he looked around him, and there was one city in the state that was ungovernable. Sly Stone City, Oakland, California, where I grew up. And nobody wanted to be mayor of Oakland, well, except for some people who took advantage of the city. And the corruption was rampant. The crime was through the roof. Nobody wanted to be mayor of Oakland. He said, I'll be mayor. Of course, he didn't even live there. So he moved there, and he ran because nobody else really of any quality was running. He won. And everybody said he's going to fail, he's going to do terribly, but he just served. He just served and he served and he served. He had no personal agenda. This is about politics. This is about, because everybody, by the end of his 8-year term, everybody liked him. The people on the left liked him. The people on the right liked him. The business people liked him. The poor people liked him. The crooks even liked him because they were making money. Everybody liked him. Why? See, this is the thing about love. Love works. Love works, but it doesn't necessarily work to get the outcome you think. But in his case, he went on to become Secretary of State, and then now he's a governor. But my point is that his spirit of service that he learned from Mother Teresa, that very tough-minded person, and she really was tough-minded. But Jesus wasn't very nice, was he? I mean, think about that guy who was lying there for all those years, and everybody got ahead of him to get into the healing pool. And Jesus said, what's your problem? And he says, well, the people get ahead of me. And he started into his story, and Jesus cut him off and said, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Now, when Jesus got into that consciousness, it was like Mother Teresa telling Jerry Brown, this is what you're going to do. Jerry Brown said she didn't negotiate. You didn't have a conversation with her. You did what she said. And Jesus had the same consciousness. That's the tough-minded side of love, that strength of love, that is spiritual service, that is truly strong. But doesn't demand that other people do what we say, just comes from that spiritual consciousness. And when Jesus said, get up, take up your mat, and walk, the man got up and he took up his mat and says, okay. And he did it. And look throughout the gospel record where Jesus, he tried to meet people where they were but they had to bridge the gap and make an effort themselves. He almost every case asked him, do you really want to be healed? Or gave him something to do that proved that they wanted to be healed. Show yourself to the priest, or don't show yourself to the priest, or go do this thing. And in every case, if they were willing to engage. So look at your life, spiritual service. But what is spiritual service? Spiritual service has boundaries. It's not enabling. When do you not give spiritual service? Maybe that's a good question. Because we're talking about giving spiritual service, but if we have a mindset where that means doing what everybody wants us to do all the time, that's not spiritual service. What is spiritual service? It's wanting the highest and best. That's the definition of love. Wanting the highest and best for people. One time I was having a hard time loving somebody, and I was wondering, am I loving this person or not? I don't know. Is this unconditional love? And I was meditating. What came to me was, well, if this person had a horrible case of the flu, I mean bedridden, really nasty flu, and you knew it was in their best interest to get well, and you had the power to do it by snapping your fingers, would you do it? So look into your life. You say, oh, I'm not very loving. Well, yeah, but with that person that you perhaps have a hard time with, if you could snap your fingers to get them over the flu, much is forgiven you, as Jesus said, because you have loved much. Now, he said that to the prostitute, but he's really saying it to you and me. Much is forgiven you, for you've loved much. If you lead with your heart, all the forces of the universe will come together and support you in moving in love. And much is forgiven you, meaning that all manner of things work together for good. What did Scott Peck say? He said, if you're leading with your heart, if you really have a spirit of goodwill, then there's like the invisible forces that move in your benefit and will move with you. Paul said all things work together for good for those who love God, and it will work together, not necessarily to give you personally, ego you, what you want, but it will move you in the direction that you need to move, and it will move others in the direction they need to be in as well. So what is this love business? Well, love really is about spiritual service. It's a surrendered kind of detachment. You know, detachment means you're not giving spiritual service in order to get an outcome, and knowing when not to give spiritual service. And this is a challenging concept. I wasn't sure I was going to share it, but you don't give spiritual service to somebody if it would weaken them, if it's something that they would be better off doing themselves, and for you to do it would render them dependent or weak, or if it meets a need on a different level than what they truly need. Like, for instance, if somebody's addicted and they want money, and that would be love, except for it's not. So that's not spiritual service. You meet the need on the level that truly supports them, that perhaps it's a different level. Perhaps it's tough love, and that's a tough one. You know, there's that woman, and I like to share this story. You know, the good stories I tell over and over again because they're just so good. But that woman who called me at 8 in the morning on a Sunday morning and said her daughter was, picked up by the police at the age of 13 for hard drug use, and she was at the juvenile hall, and what do I do with her? And it just came all over me, tough love, tough love. And so I looked up tough love. I got the phone number for her. She got in touch with him, and she did the work. Now, part of her, the girl's, 13-year-old girl's probation was that she had to volunteer, give service in the community. And so the mother said, can she do it at the church? Well, the person who ran the office was a person in recovery and recognized that when she showed up the first day, she was high. And so she sent her home, told the mother. She got some more help. The Tough Love worked. The Tough Love organization really isn't about being mean or harsh with the child. It's about being tough with yourself and setting boundaries with yourself so that you're not enabling bad behavior. And this girl went on to become an international officer in the Youth of Unity. Went on. Last thing I heard, she had her PhD in governing systems for cities, and last thing I heard was an admissions director for a major university, the top of the department. How did that happen? Well, tough love. So that's spiritual service. So when do you give service? When do you not give service? Love is service. It's detachment, and love does not expect other people to respond. And that's a tough one. When you give love and service, do you expect other people to respond with a thank you very much? You know, I experienced this in one church. This was about 30 years ago. And there was a woman who came to the services, and this is a tough story. It was in the evenings. I had an evening service in that church. I was associate minister. And I'd heard that she was put into hospice care. We hadn't seen her in a little while, and she lived about a half hour from the church. So I called her about 8 times over a 2-week period, wanting to come see her. And she was in hospice care at home. And she didn't pick up. She didn't return the call. But I started hearing from people that she was telling everyone that her church, specifically her minister, had abandoned her and wasn't trying to reach her. Well, I wrote her letters. This is before emails. Finally, I just got in my car and I drove the half hour. And you know, when somebody's in hospice care, you don't want to just surprise them, but I did. And she came to the door. She was having a good day. And she looked at me and her eyes got real wide. And then she just fell into my arms sobbing, and she apologized. She said, I'm so sorry for the way I've treated you. I was mad at God and I couldn't get back at God, so I figured I'd get back at you. Okay, a minister is not a minister. It's a Rorschach test, right? So this is what she did. So we had the most wonderful conversation. It was so wonderful. She opened up her heart. And it was so good. She passed 2 days later. And I showed up at the funeral, and her family was so angry because she never told them that I showed up. But I thought to myself after that, whoa, would I do that again? Yes, I would, in a heartbeat. Because it's not about getting a response. Love is love. I love because I love because I love. Together. I love because I love because I love. Because it defines you. It doesn't define the other person. You're here on earth to learn how to love. You're on earth not to get a thank you very much. Another story I shared was from another church where there was a hospital. This is in Florida, and it was one of those Florida hospitals, and it was a tough place. And a woman had a heart attack in the church. She didn't have any family, and they put her there with no monitors. They didn't have any beds, so they put her, and there were other hospitals in the area they could have sent her to, but they put her in a gurney in the hall for 4 days with no monitors. And I went to visit her every day, and I went to all the administrators and finally got her into a room. Well, she told everybody that nobody visited her because she was, again, so I guess resentful of what she was dealing with. And you know what? The next time she got sick, I went to visit her anyway. It didn't matter because it's not about that. It's about love is about service. Love is about spiritual service with detachment. Not expecting anything back. And this is a very interesting thing. We think we know what love is. We think love's a feeling. We think we know what love is. Love is eliciting a response by our acting a certain way, and then they're going to act a certain way, and that'll be love. That's in a Hallmark card somewhere, but that's not love. What is love? Well, love is a force. Love is the binding power of the universe. And love, it's experienced in our hearts, in our deepest hearts. There's a wonderful poem about this attitude of love, this attitude of goodwill with detachment. It's called To Let Go, and I think a woman in my church wrote it. I don't know. I've had this for years, but I can't find it online. To let go is not to stop caring. It's recognizing I can't do it for somebody else. To let go is not to cut myself off. It's to realize I can't control others. To let go is not to enable, but to allow learning from natural consequences. To let go is not to fight my powerlessness, but to accept that the outcome is not always in my hands. To let go is not to try to change or blame others. It's to make the most of myself. To let go is not to care for. It's to care about. To let go is not to fix. It's to be supportive. To let go is not to falsely judge. It's to allow another to be a human being. To let go is not to try to arrange outcomes, but to allow others to affect their own destinies. To let go is not to be protective. It's to permit others to face their own reality. To let go is not to regulate anyone, but to strive to become what I dream I can be. To let go is to fear less and love more. But there are times that people do need help. We need help. We need a jump start in life. But then there's a time when that jump start becomes debilitating. I experienced when I was in college. When I was in college, I put myself through school, and I didn't have a lot of money. And the money I spent on records. So when I needed a battery for my car, I spent it on records. So I called AAA, which my parents had bought me a membership of AAA, and they'd come out and give you a jump start. Over and over again until I got a call from them, and they said they were canceling my membership. And that was not very loving. That was not fair. It wasn't kind. I mean, that's what they're there for, to give me a jump start. So what did I do? I forgo a couple of records, and I buy a battery, and I don't have to call them. And I learned from that. They were loving me. They didn't know they were loving me, but they were loving me. How do you know? How do you know which way to be, the upstairs way or the downstairs way? They say that a hand that can't open or is always open all the time, or closed all the time, is a broken hand, and a bird that can't flap its wings up and down is a bird that cannot fly. And that is that with love. You have to be flexible. There's an open-handed love. There's a closed-handed love. There's spread your wings. There's fold your wings. There different ways, different strokes for different folks, different ways of loving depending on what the need is. So love is detachment. Love is goodwill, wanting the highest and best. But with detachment, what does Wayne Dyer say? His definition is a tough one, and people always wince when I tell it. Love is the ability and willingness to allow others to be and do what they choose to be and do without any insistence that they satisfy you. That's a tough one. But that doesn't mean you can't ask for your needs or that your needs are illegitimate. But it's that willingness to let other people be where they're going to be. As a parent, you're a trellis. They grow up as a vine on the trellis, but you don't control the growth. Martha Creek says, no bean plant ever grew by pulling on it. You can't govern the growth of others. You have to let people go. There's a wonderful story about love and Jesus. Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist and poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. When he came to Simon Peter said to him, Lord, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus replied, you don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand. No, said Peter, you're never going to wash my feet. Jesus said, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Well then, Lord, don't just wash my feet, but wash my hand and my head as well. Jesus said, a person who's had a bath only needs to have their feet washed. The rest of their body's clean. And you're all clean. Well, maybe not all of you. He was talking about Judas there. When he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and he returned to his place. Do you understand what I just did? You call me teacher and Lord. Rightly so. That's what I am. But now that I, your teacher and Lord, have washed your feet, you should also wash each other's feet. I've set for you an example that you should do as I've done for you. So what does the service look like? What does it look like when you love somebody who's difficult to love? You know, Jane Elizabeth Hart, who's my meditation teacher, she wrote the Spiritual Power Tools and the 7 Steps. She talked about a transformative experience she had when she had a really mean supervisor. She was working, this is like 40 years, 30 years ago at IBM, and she had a supervisor named Janie who was just awful, would come up and even if you were doing everything right, would find something wrong with it, and everybody was scared to death of her and hated her guts and was just awful. And Jane didn't know how to deal with her. So she went in meditation, she asked, and she got, this is your initiation in love. You're just to love her. She can't take anything away from you. You're doing your job. Just love her. So she said every time she'd come up to her, I would just hold my heart open and say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do better on that. Yeah, I'll try this. And she just loved her and loved her and loved her until it got to the point where she really enjoyed having Janie come up to her. And Janie actually, she didn't stop doing what she was doing, but she did it with a little less of an edge. The day came that Janie retired from all of her years there. She'd been there for decades, and the day of her retirement, they had a little reception or whatever. And Jane went into the women's room, and Janie came in a little later and saw Jane there and just burst into tears and fell into her arms and said, you're the only person I've ever felt in my life who loved me. Think about that gift. She's going out from the planet, as difficult as she was, and somebody loved her. It's not about loving when it's easy. It's not about being a victim either, because, you know, allowing a person to victimize you isn't wanting the best and highest for them either. But she wasn't being victimized. She was just being annoyed. Jesus said, you've heard it said, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But I'm telling you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be like God, because God causes the sun to rise on the good and the bad and sends rain to fall on the just and the unjust alike. Now, if you love those people who only love you, what reward do you have? Even tax collectors get to do that, don't they? And if you only are good to your brothers, What more have you done than them? Even the Gentiles do the same, don't they? So then be perfect, like God is perfect. But the perfection is wanting the best and highest for everyone. It's not ever making a mistake, because much is forgiven you because you've loved much. And that's you. You know, when I give a talk about love, first place people go is they take their temperature. They say, oh, I fell down. I didn't do everything I was supposed to do. Truth is that you have loved much. In your life, I know you've loved much. And much has been forgiven you. You've been given back up and understanding. And as long as you lead with your heart and are open, much is forgiven you, for you've loved much. You know, many of us have heard the analogy of, are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? How many people have heard of that? Are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? Well, he's heard it. Okay, well, let me tell you about that. But I was thinking how it applies to love. And unconditional love in a spirit of service and detachment and goodwill. And what it is most of us love like a thermometer. It's like whatever the temperature is in our environment, whatever everybody's doing around us, we feel love or we don't feel love. It's a passive thing. I experience love if you do what I want you to do, that I call love. But then there's being a thermostat. And what does a thermostat do? The thermostat actively, proactively generates the love. I experience the love whether or not, like Jerry Brown, it's a person who is from the streets and I'm washing them, or whether it's Janie who comes up and criticizes my work. I experience love. And it doesn't mean you have to be a victim or that you always have to give in or whatever. Sometimes you get to be like Mother Teresa, very, very firm, but you never do it to retaliate. And so you're a thermostat. You make a decision. I'm going to be love in this situation. I don't know what love is. Sometimes that's the best thing. I don't know what love is here, but I'm willing to be taught, willing to be humble enough to be taught. So, a lot more about love, but let's just close our eyes and know that love is, it just is. God is love in Versa Visa, I saw on a sign once. And we're just going to open our hearts and say, in the situations in our lives where we find it difficult to love, we lift up into love. We open our hearts to love. There is a great beating heart at the center of the universe. And this great beating heart is the universal heart of love. And we are one with, our heart is one with that heart. I may not know how to love consciously on a personal level, but my good heart knows how to love. There is that in me that knows how to love. And I express the courage and the willingness to love. And so I surrender into the love of my good heart. And I even pray, God, I don't always know how to love, but my heart does. I may not always know what to do, but the great heart of God knows. And my heart is connected with that heart. And I let love flow through me, flow through my heart now. And I just dwell in that love and surrender. Thank you, God, that I have a good heart, a heart of love, and I lead with my heart, and I'm open, teachable, like a child. Teach me to love. So it is. Amen. The deepest recesses of our hearts. So take a deep breath and let it out. And move into the now. I lighten up. I let go into love. And I move into this now moment. I lead with my heart. And I'm open at the top of my being I'm open to my intuitive guidance to teach me what love is. And I set aside anything that I may have in my mind, in my heart, in my hands. And I let myself move into the stillness. I move into my heart. My heart already knows how to love. I was given this good heart. I am my good heart. Much has been forgiven me, for I have loved much. And love is not about doing it perfectly. It's about having my heart open and leading with my heart and opening up to the possibility that there's another way to love, a deeper, richer, more satisfying way to love. God, I acknowledge that my purpose here on earth is to learn to love. And there's no formula. That love is an experience as I link my heart, my good heart, with the warm, personal, compassionate heart that beats at the center of the universe, the heart of God. And I lead with my heart. And I am open. And I even take the courageous step, the heartfelt step of saying, God, in many things I don't seem to know how to love, but there is that in me that knows how to love. A power in me. My good heart knows how to love. My heart of courage knows how to love. And so I let go of all my pictures and images of what love is supposed to be. And I get humble enough, teachable enough, loving as a child enough to be willing to be taught love. God, I want to love the way your universal heart loves. I let go of my pictures and I'm willing to see love in a new light, in a new way. Love is the answer. And there is no question. And so I surrender into this teachability, this childlike openness. There is that in me that knows how to love, and I let go into its stream and simply rest in love. Rest in love. God is love, and love is God. And I let go in love, and I'm teachable, and I'm willing, and I know there is that in me that knows how to love in a way that's empowering and strong. My heart of goodwill loves. My heart of service loves. Unattached to outcomes, for no response, no expectation. Just love, just be. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And so it is. And so it is.